Don't let these months fly by you. There is still time to get in that summer trip. And let's be real, we might want to add the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to our list. The Cleveland Museum is home of all things rock and roll, and that's an expansive definition, y'all. The new SNL exhibit also brings you up close to artifacts from musical sketches like the cowbell, or maybe the glasses from Run DMC, or the dress from Sabrina Carpenter, and so much more. Check out the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to learn more about the music that connects us all. More info is at rockhall.com/exhibitions/SNL 50 Years Music. Today on CityCast Chicago, summer means summer blockbusters, which got us thinking, what are the best Chicago movies of all time? It's Thursday, July 17th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. We've got executive producer Simone Alisea in the building.
Hey, Jacoby.
We've got Hey Chicago newsletter editor Emmy Mack.
Hey, Chicago.
And social media manager Rick Homuth.
Pleasure to be here.
Oh my God, she said the name of the thing in the thing. It's like in the movie when they say the name of the movie.
Each of us brought 3 of our favorite Chicago movies, and y'all, this list spans 50 years. We're going to go through the list in chronological order. Each of us will describe what the movie is that we brought, why we enjoy it, how Chicago is, and we'll all kind of talk about whether we've seen it or not. Does it still hold up? And as our resident transplant, we're going to let Simone Alisea guide us through this conversation.
Yeah, because here's a secret. I haven't seen the vast majority of movies on this list. And so I'm just here to keep us on the rails. Rick, we want to start with you. One of the movies you brought, Medium Cool from 1969. First, what is this movie? What is it about?
So Medium Cool is, I think, not only a very important Chicago movie, but a movie period. You know, it's sort of equal parts 1960s documentary as it is an art house drama. It tells the story of a jaded TV news cameraman who is always just trying to get the shot by any means necessary and has kind of no regard for the other people on the other end of his camera. But, in navigating the city during the social upheaval leading up to and including the 1968 Democratic National Convention, he kind of like takes a different angle on the whole thing. And more than the story, I just think the movie itself, which splices what we consider documentary footage, of real things happening to real people at the time with, fictional narrative, I think it gives perhaps the most, I suppose, tactile understanding of the 68 DNC protest and their aftermath. What I love about the movie is it adds context to a moment in history we seem only to discuss in a macro level, which also includes a really cool spotlight on the people of this city to whom the DNC is, just one violent episode in a greater, I suppose, political and class-oriented and race-related war, So, and that's another thing I appreciated and I think makes for it, what in my opinion can be the best kind of Chicago movie is, there's a lot of good Chicago movies. A lot of them are about just white people, right? And I think in order to be a great Chicago movie, there has to be other voices involved. And I think Medium Cool counts among those.
If you had to put sort of a hard and fast rule on it, how good is it? How Chicago is it?
I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it's a masterpiece. I think everybody should watch it. I think it really does give a microscopic view on people on the ground in 1968, both those with kind of a political agency and those without it, and those who are interested in that kind of action and those who are simply, exploited subjects of just the city at large. And for that reason, I think it qualifies as not only a great movie period, but a great Chicago movie.
Emmy, Jacob, are you guys familiar with this?
Ended up watching it with Japanese subtitles on YouTube. I paid for quite a few movies as we were preparing for this. The idea that you were making a movie that somehow coincides and the climax happens at the exact same time of the DNC, which I think many people probably at the time had a sense that this DNC had high likelihood of violence, police clashes. Obviously, the mayor of Chicago at the time, Senior Daley, had given police sort of carte blanche authority. But the idea that a movie was being made in the middle of this, and the poignant idea that not only the title is asking with this idea of medium cool, what this medium of television and video was supposed to do, like the idea that like photography and video were supposed to show us atrocities in a way that we wouldn't be able to turn and look away. We wouldn't be able to feign ignorance. And this cameraman at the beginning has that sort of stoic disconnect to what they are filming, like with the car accident. And by the end, someone is taking a picture of them in a car accident and just sort of goes on. Now, what is this, 60 years later, I think we'd argue that just because we all have phones in our pocket and access to recording doesn't make the atrocities that happen on the line of racism and sexism and classism less likely to happen. In fact, I'd argue we are probably more desensitized now than they were claiming we were 60 years ago. And so
Absolutely.
I think it's a fantastic choice.
Well put.
Yeah, I think certainly highly relevant to the time we're living in now. I have to say, though, I am not sold on the sort of lack of plot as somebody who likes to watch movies for story.
But just don't get art, Simone.
I don't get it. Jacoby, the next pick on the list is one of yours, and that is one I've actually seen definitely like on lists of like best Chicago movies, and that's Cooley High, 1975. What is this movie about?
Man, what a classic. I remember watching this very young with my grandparents, and one of the things I appreciate about watching it is the story of two friends, Cheese and Preach. Preach played by Glenn Thurman, Cheese played by Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, two legendary actors who, like in a Ferris Bueller type way, they ditched school at the beginning, and you see them really going around the city, spending a day off at Lincoln Park Zoo, going through their neighborhood of Cabrini Green, hopping on the back of a moving CTA bus, up under the L track lines. And the story kind of follows this duo and their friends as they move around the city, get into some antics. Both the entire time are trying to get with girls, trying to flirt, trying to live their life disconnected from the struggles of their neighborhood, the overworking of their parents, and their own desires to pursue something bigger, with Cheese being a basketball star and Preach being a writer. Unfortunately, by the end, it takes a tragic turn, but I think it is a really cool exploration of Chicago. It comes out in 75, but it's set in the 60s. Still holds up to this day.
Rick, Emmy, have you guys seen this?
I watched it this morning, and I was like, how have I never seen this? This was so fun to watch. Obviously, things take a really harsh turn in the movie, but I enjoyed just watching the kids have fun for the first half, because I think that's a side of stories about Cabrini that you don't often see. And researching the movie a little, I saw that the writer talked about how he grew up in the Cabrini Green project, and he said he had the best times of his life there. And also, I loved their hats. And
the fashion in the movie is fire.
No, it was such a great coming of age story. And I'm glad that I watched it this morning. I'm going to watch it again. And I also have Baby Love stuck in my head, too, like you do. From
that was another thing I was going to say about this movie. I think it arguably has the greatest soundtrack of any Chicago movie. Let me run y'all through some of this soundtrack. Baby Love by the Supremes, Stop in the Name of Love, the Supremes, You Beat Me to the Punch, Mary Wells, Sweet First Love, Freddie Perrin, Cold Blooded, My Girl, The Temptations. Like, I can keep going on and on. Fingertips, Stevie Wonder. It's a Motown guided movie, and the soundtrack of that movie, it's extremely Chicago in its portrayal of the city and the different neighborhoods that it hits. But I also think it is legendary exactly because I think it is the godfather in this genre of Chicago movies I'm going to call Cabrini Green canon.
There is a whole Cabrini Green sort of
your Hardball, yes, your Hoop Dreams,
but also Candyman.
It is a huge setting in the city. And to Emmy's point, I don't think it always got fleshed out with equal parts joy and tragedy. It was good to kind of sit down in a time capsule of sort with the former Cabrini Green projects.
I'm going to ask the same question. How How good is it? How Chicago is it? Maybe, maybe put it on a scale of 5, let's say. Just
I got you. In terms of how Chicago it is, I'm going to give it a hard 5. How good is it? I think it still holds up now and should be seen alongside, your Breakfast Clubs, your Ferris Bueller's in terms of a coming of age story. And so I'm going to give that a hard 4.5. My biggest critique would be that so much of the story focused on like the male vantage point of like sort of trying to get some action as a young person. And so that probably
a classic teen sort of mid-century kind of comedy there. I will say, to your point about like being included in the like John Hughes high school coming of age canon, absolutely. Just watch the trailer and I feel like anyone will feel that way. The next movie on our list, Rick, is another one of yours, Stony Island, 1978. What is this movie about?
So Stony Island is more of like a musical almost. It's not necessarily, but it's the plot is so very secondary. It's got Teamsters, it's got aldermen, it's got the accents. There's a crucial Roosevelt pronunciation in there, which I like a lot. There is a line in the film in which one character tells another, I got the alderman to get you a Teamster gig to drive the hearse to Mayor Daley's funeral. There's taverns. There's even a chase scene where somebody's in the loop and sees somebody else on an L track get on the train, and he chases after the train underneath it, through the loop, which is just great. And so, at the end of the day, I don't think it's necessarily the most compelling plot in the world, but I do think it has themes of, a multiracial Chicago, a multi-class element to Chicago where, there's this white Appalachian kid who plays the saxophone and he joins the band. And it's got all these cool exterior shots. I just love seeing downtown back in the 70s. And the music, in my opinion, stands well on its own, irrespective of the film altogether.
Rick, how good is it? How Chicago is it?
I guess I wasn't prepared to rate this on a scale because I would say it's 5 and is also a 5.
If that's your opinion, man, like that's cool.
I would say the quality of the movie is, probably a 3. Like I said, the plot is not going to have anybody at the edge of their seat. In terms of the Chicago-ness, I do give it a solid 5, as I do with nearly all of the films I picked, because I think it's just so effortlessly Chicago. There's no crowd service in the form of, hey guys, let's all meet at Navy Pier, the way that every local loves to meet, Like, I feel like so many movies suffer from exterioritis where it's like, oh, well, we gotta, everybody knows we go to have our big discussions on the LaSalle Street Bridge or whatever. And that just isn't really how life works in the city necessarily. So I think Stony Island presents a very unvarnished, but also, charming depiction of what life was really like for different types of people in the 1970s in Chicago.
The trailer I watched for this included a review from Playboy that called it a musical. Is it a musical?
It does feel like in many ways the film is an excuse to show the music, which I suppose is a loose definition of a musical, but it certainly isn't like a musical in the sense that like Mamma Mia is a musical.
We have a couple of other musical films on this list, including our next one, which is one of Emmy's picks, Blues Brothers, 1980.
Yeah.
Certainly one of the films that like drives movie tourism in Chicago. I have a Blues Brothers shirt that I think I bought at Midway Airport. So,
Is it a musical is a perfect transition to talk about the Blues Brothers, which if you haven't seen it, I guess I could just say it's about 2 men on a mission from God. That's the plot. I know that everybody has their associations with the Blues Brothers. Even if you haven't seen it, you obviously know what the guys look like. And it kind of takes place all over the damn place in Chicagoland. You see the North Side, the South Side, you see Calumet City. It's following the story of the 2 brothers. One just got out of the old Joliet prison, so that's featured too. And then they're basically just trying to get the band back together. And that's taken to the extreme. Tracking down old friends, enemies are chasing them. They need to raise money to save the church where they were raised by nuns. There's a lot of different things going on, which makes sense if you consider that Dan Aykroyd's original script was 324 pages. I think that I've tried to show some of my friends who aren't from Chicago, and they think it's like a little long and convoluted. To me, though, the central characters, the brothers, really are magnetic. I can't take my eyes off of them. I first saw Blues Brothers when I was a kid. I mean, I saw it many times as a kid growing up, and I don't know, I never really watched cartoons or anything. So Jake and Elwood Blues were like superheroes to me. They were the only superheroes I ever really knew. Like they did acrobatics and basically had a flying car.
That car chase is insane at the end where they're on lower whacker. The car, like the police cars are like flying off the highway. Like it's nuts.
It's a very good end chase, and I'm not the biggest Blues Brothers fan.
The car chase is like this huge exhale. Like it's
Yes.
Euphoric to me.
It's like it's like a 13-minute punchline to a hour and a half long joke. Like it is.
Exactly.
Basically, in 2023, there was the first ever Blues Brothers convention held at the old Joliet prison. And I played hooky from work and went with my cousin. And it was the best decision I ever made because thousands of people turned out in hats and sunglasses, which is corny, but it was just so funny to see how much people embrace kind of the iconography of the Blues Brothers. Dan Aykroyd made an appearance. He got on stage with Jim Belushi and they were dancing and stuff. And it was just cool because I don't think anything like that's going to happen probably ever again. To me, it was a special experience just to see. Obviously, we're naming some more unknown esoteric Chicago movies today, and I'm excited to give them their due. But there's, I think, something to be said about how Blues Brothers has been embraced by people in Chicago and also people in the rest of the country to know about blues in Chicago.
So, Emmy, I'm going to ask you the same question. How good is it? How Chicago is it?
I'm going to say 5 for Chicago, and I'll say 4 for how good is it. Even though I love that movie, I just want to save my 5.
This one is a pick that I'm bringing because I think it's worth debating. Another movie that I would say drives some movie tourism in Chicago, and that is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986. For anybody who has somehow missed this movie, it's about a kid who plays hooky from school and goes on some madcap adventures around Chicagoland. Friend has an existential crisis at the Art Institute. He sings Twist and Shout on a float at the Von Steuben Day Parade. They go to a Cubs game. And I'm going to just kind of flip it back on you guys since I am sure you've all seen this. How good is it? How Chicago is it? Should it even be on this list?
Absolutely. I think when I consider Ferris Bueller, you have to think about what life was like before Ferris Bueller and John Hughes went on his tear in the 1980s and how Chicago was depicted in film. I think now, Ferris Bueller is referenced to the point of parody as like the Chicago movie everybody always talks about and always thinks about and is probably on daytime TV all the time. Like that wasn't the case, obviously before it was made. And I think it really just hits every nail on the head. I think it's a little by the book. But again, you have to consider that Mr. Hughes wrote that book.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. It didn't make it into my like top 3 or top 5, but I can't hate on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Your version of a perfect day, fancy French restaurant, driving a badass car, your favorite baseball team, performing in a parade, tricking your parents and your principal, watching your principal get bitten by a dog. Like it hits all of the notes of just like childhood escapism. It does hold up to this day.
I find Ferris himself to be smarmy, but I think he's balanced well by Sloane in her white fringe leather jacket, which to me is the most memorable part of the movie. Yeah, in general, I think I like for a coming of age story a bit more of a angstier thing, like the other John Hughes movies, Breakfast Club or Pretty in Pink. They're a bit of less action-driven stories.
Next movie on our list is another one we've talked about on the show. Jacoby, this one's yours. The Fugitive, 1993.
The Fugitive was one of those movies as a kid that I did enjoy watching even before I could get a sense that it was it had Chicago ties. I don't know. The suspense of the movie is so good. It follows the story of Dr. Richard Kimball, played by Harrison Ford, who is accused of killing his wife. He is sentenced to prison, but on their way to what they are saying is a downstate Illinois prison. Some of the other incarcerated individuals end up taking over the bus. It gets hit in this huge set piece by a train. Kimball is able to escape and is then working to prove his innocence. All the while, U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard, aka Academy Award winning actor Tommy Lee Jones, is on the hunt. Again, from start to finish, action packed. Harrison Ford is so locked in. I didn't kill my wife. Tommy Lee is so stoic the entire time. You see the chaos of Cook County Hospital. You see, again, another movie that found their way directly in the middle of a legendary Chicago parade, the St. Patrick's Day parade. Fun fact, an entirely another movie was filming during that parade, Blink.
Oh, really?
And so they had to work together with their production crews to make sure they weren't getting in each other's shots and stuff.
I did not know that.
By the end, he is able to prove his innocence and also uncover this huge medical scandal. This is like pharmaceutical scandal. But you get to Pullman. You see the Palmer House Hilton. I love something Rick said earlier, that some movies just fall into the trappings of what was you were basically talking about locations.
Exteriorism.
Exterioritis, I called it.
You could feel that Andrew Davis, the director, and who also directed Stony Island, had an investment in Chicago. Harrison Ford, who was born in Chicago, it was actually his suggestion to film the movie here, and thought that it would provide a texture to the film that you couldn't get anywhere else. And I will agree with them. It's a good damn action movie. 5 out of 5 in terms of good movie. Look, I know the kids may not want to hear it, but it's almost back to school season, which can be very stressful on families. But one thing you can start checking off your list: preparing your student for Chicago Public Schools selective enrollment exam. It's coming up, and that's where Top Marks Prep is here to help. Top Marks Prep was built by a Chicago tutor who saw what students really need: a structured study plan, plenty of practice, and a way to track their progress. Top Marks starts with a free diagnostic test, then creates a personalized study plan based on what your student actually needs help with. There's video lessons, targeted practice questions, and unlimited full-length mock exams, all tailored to the CPS exam format. That October exam is coming up faster than you think, so don't wait to prepare. Sign up today at topmarksprep.com/citycast and receive 15% off. Again, that's topmarksprep.com/citycast.
Emmy, this next pick brings us into the 21st century. It's your pick. Something that completely missed me. I knew literally zero until you mentioned the name of this film. Return to Me, 2000. What is this movie about?
Yes. So whenever I can tell people that Return to Me exists, I take that opportunity. Basically a heart transplant story. So, and that's not spoiling too much, first 5 minutes of the movie, but David Duchovny is a handsome architect, and his beautiful wife is a zookeeper, mainly working with gorillas at Lincoln Park Zoo. So she's basically like a perfect person. And they get into a horrible car accident, and her heart gets transplanted into Minnie Driver, who has long-time heart issues. And she is a single woman in her 30s living at home with her two uncles. Her parents are dead. One uncle is Italian, one uncle is Irish, and they co-own a restaurant together, which is basically Twin Acres. That's where they're filming it. So there's Irish and Italian on the menu. Hilarity ensues. And you really get these almost overdrawn caricatures of those European stereotypes, but it's in a loving way. So basically, what do you think will happen? Will Minnie Driver and David Duchovny fall in love now that she shares his dead wife's heart?
It seems likely.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
It mostly takes place in Lincoln Park, obviously, because they're at Twin Acres and there's a lot happening at the zoo. But Minnie Driver's best friend is played by Bonnie Hunt. And actually, this Bonnie Hunt wrote and directed the movie. It was her directorial debut. And I think Bonnie Hunt herself is just a Chicago icon that doesn't get enough credit. She grew up here. She's Polish and Irish. She became a nurse, then an oncology nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital downtown. So even before taking off in showbiz, like she did so much with her life here in Chicago. Like I said, even though parts of the movie are fun and light, I do think that the fact that his wife died and the entire surgery is actually treated with the seriousness it deserves. And the wife is obviously talked about because her ghost is essentially haunting the entire movie because, as Bonnie Hunt puts it, she has his dead wife's heart.
How good is it? How Chicago is it?
I think for Chicago, because they're relegated to Lincoln Park, 3 or 4. I'll say 4 because then also subplot the entire time to honor his wife, his dead wife. David Duchovny is building and designing a new primate habitat at Lincoln Park Zoo. And then for good, I'm saying 5 just because I cry every time I watch this, even though obviously I know what's going to happen. And I just think I'm saying 5 because I want people to go watch this movie. I think that this is a really interesting romance. I think you should watch it.
I'm really skeptical of this one, Emmy. I'm telling you, I love a rom-com. I'm here for it, particularly the early 2000s rom-com. I'm skeptical. Next movie on the list is one I added, again, because I want to see the debate, and that is Chicago, the musical from 2002. Have y'all actually seen this? I'm not convinced everyone here has seen it.
It's a great movie.
You
it's
like
not a Chicago
it?
movie, but it's a great movie.
You like it?
I love it. I mean, I love show tunes, period. I think Richard Gere, always worth the price of admission.
I didn't know you were a musical guy, Rick.
I just love the songs and the dances. You know what I mean? I don't know what to tell you.
In middle school, we had to learn the pop squish sex dance,
classic,
and perform it in front of
all
middle
of
school, and perform it at the big end of year show.
You know, that is a little risque now that you think about it.
For anyone who doesn't know, that's a song about all the ways these women allegedly / killed their husbands.
Yes. Cell block tango.
What's the basic plot?
So Roxy Hart is a wannabe jazz dancer, right? And she's got a deadbeat husband who lives in downtown Chicago, who she comes home to find cheating on him, right? So she pulls out a gun and fires it. And it's actually not her husband. She's cheating on her husband, played by John C. Reilly, who's also a Chicago guy. And so Richard Gere is the kind of like hotshot attorney who's supposed to get her off. And it turns into this whole media circus in which they try and kind of goad the press into taking different angles about who reached for the gun and where. Meanwhile, Roxy Hart's in jail and she kind of becomes a media sensation. But Catherine Zeta-Jones is the kind of other former media sensation, the kind of has-been dancing woman. So they developed a sort of rivalry. There's a lot of singing, a lot of dancing. I would consider this more of a Broadway thing than a Chicago thing. It's interesting if you actually go to Broadway in New York City, they very defiantly claim it as their own, which is interesting to me. But I will say, I think despite its Chicago roots in terms of like the choreographer and the writers and all that, most of it takes place like literally on stages. That's how in the movie they kind of like set up the reason why they're all singing and dancing, which is a tough thing for musicals to do. I think it's a wonderful film. I think it's a great adaptation. Musical adaptations are very hard. I think it does it well, but I still don't think there's a lot of Chicago-ness to it.
The stages they're on are Chicago stages and they're Chicago acts. But I kind of see what you're saying. I don't think it is Chicago in the sense that it represents anything about how Chicago actually is or was, right? It is this very like, we see this a lot in the like Al Capone tourism, right? It's this like glorification of that era and sort of the glitz and glamour of white gangsterism. I think on the Chicago scale, I think a 3 would be generous. As I'm surprised to hear that you like the movie. I like the musical a lot. I think the music's great. All That Jazz is one of my karaoke standards. And so
this movie cleaned up at the Oscars.
It did.
Best Picture.
I do think there's an element that we haven't talked about in this thing, which is like how readable is it as a Chicago movie to people outside of Chicago, which I think means something of like.
I think that's why like Home Alone didn't make it on my list, and I imagine on somebody else, because like that movie could exist in any suburb.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it is Chicago-y. I give it a 3. I think it's a good movie. I give it a 4. It's such a good time. If you like musicals, you'll like it. If you don't like musicals, you're not going to like it. That's just how musicals are. Next one on this list, Jacoby, is one of yours. And you chose a sequel,
yes,
which I think is an interesting...
Yeah, I'm interested in that too.
Yeah. So the movie you chose from 2004, Barbershop 2.
Back in business.
Barbershop 1 and 2 both take place in Chicago. Why Barbershop 2?
One, I love the Barbershop cinematic universe. It was really cool when I was a kid. The first Barbershop came out in 2002, and then a couple years later, Barbershop 2 comes out. Barbershop is the story of Calvin Palmer Jr., played by Ice Cube, who owns a legendary barbershop on 79th Street in South Shore, founded by his grandfather and his father. Both movies are very similar. The barbershop's future is threatened by something. In the first movie, it's really like a local loan shark. And I think the reason I like Barbershop 2 a little bit more is because Barbershop 1 feels like Chicago is a setting, but most of the movie takes place inside of the barbershop. The story is really about the inner workings of this group of people who work there.
I see. It could be a barbershop anywhere, kind of,
Anywhere.
you know?
But I do think Barbershop, even though they have some great set pieces, you see the ale, you see the currency exchange, the submarine / gyro spot.
The first one, he throws the gun into the Chicago River, which is I always remember.
You see Anthony Anderson pushing an ATM up 79th Street. But in the second one, the story is the barbershop is being threatened by gentrification in the neighborhood and a rich developer who is opening a competing barbershop across the street. And it's supposed to be a 21st century modern barbershop that pushes out this old mom and pop shop. I think that still, even 20 years later, feels like a huge Chicago plot line. They have an alder of the 51st Ward who is trying to play both sides.
What is it with Chicago movies and creating 51st Wards?
Because I think if you ask somebody about the 51st Ward, they'd be like, oh yeah, I think I got a cousin who lives out there.
The story of this mom and pop shop trying to fight against the gentrification of the neighborhood, the alder who isn't really a team player, the developer who's really interested in not just buying up the barbershop, but buying the corner store and the laundromat and creating this new enterprise on the block. That story still feels so relevant and especially felt and hit home at the time. The locations in Barbershop 2, you see the Chicago Cultural Center, you see the Ale, some of the subplots of like Cedric the Entertainer's character kind of navigating the violence of the riots in the late 60s and ending up in the barbershop. There was sort of these flashbacks to him, a part of like a burgeoning Black Panther sect. It felt like the second movie was a little more concerned with the history of Chicago and how the story fits into the broader story of the city. So you get your Chicago comedian cameos from Dion Cole, D. Ray Davis. In terms of the quality of movie, I'd probably give it like a 3. It is funny. They make some references to some Chicago scandals. Its Chicago-ness, I'd probably give it a 4.
Another one that I totally missed me, did not know anything about, but wanted to watch as soon as I saw the poster, which is of Nick Cage with a bow and a quiver of arrows in like a suit. That movie is The Weatherman from 2005. What is this movie about?
So I don't think we can have a conversation about Chicago movies and not give Roger Ebert his moment. So I'm just going to describe it how he described it in his 2005 review. We think of tragic heroes outlined against the horizon, tall and doomed, the victims of their vision and fate, who fall from a great height. The Weatherman is about a tragic hero whose fall is from a low height. Basically, Nicolas Cage plays a local weatherman in Chicago, but he's not even really a meteorologist. He doesn't do the science stuff. He's kind of just a face. At the same time, his marriage is crumbling. His daughter and son, who are both around teenage age, are having a lot of issues. He doesn't live up to his father, played by Michael Caine, who's a successful, I think, Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist, and kind of looks down his nose at him. And all the while, everywhere he goes in Chicago, people throw milkshakes at him because everyone hates the weatherman.
Because he gets the weather wrong, I presume.
You would think it's because he gets the weather wrong, and that's kind of always how I interpreted it. But he, the character whose name is David Spritz, thinks that people are angry at him and throwing food at him because they're resentful of what a high-paying, easy job he has.
Huh.
So whether or not that's true, that's how he perceives it. There's first person narrator, there's a voiceover. So you really do get to see exactly what he's thinking in every situation. And he's like a real sad sack. This movie is such a winter movie. It almost seems like it couldn't exist in another season because of how miserable this character is. He lives in a pretty sterile apartment downtown while his wife and kids are in a much nicer house in Evanston. Him and his wife are separated. So all throughout the movie, he's kind of going between the city and the suburbs to spend time with them or, you know, try to win back his wife. So it's kind of an interesting separation. For that reason, like he takes his daughter shopping. He goes to Old Orchard at one point. I wouldn't say this is the most Chicago movie because there are so many of those scenes in the suburbs. So, you know, you could call it a North Shore movie in a way. But I also think that it's the perfect setting for this well-to-do white man having an existential crisis. Yeah, it's just like a really interesting character study. Also, he tries to get his kids into bow and arrow and signs. I forgot if it's the son or daughter. I think it's the daughter. It's the daughter. Yeah.
At least in the trailer.
If you like Nicolas Cage, you will like this movie. I mean, obviously people can go either way. If you like Nicolas Cage, it's a great Nicolas Cage movie, period.
I was thinking, I was like, I would watch Nicolas Cage do a character study of a sad sack in Chicago. Like that is a film I would probably watch. However, I do take issue with this idea that Chicagoans are out here being mad at the weatherman. Like,
I think that's interesting because basically we love our weather people, and we also love talking about weather. The idea of being a weatherman in Chicago is worth exploring. This particular movie takes a very strange route for it. It isn't.
Well, I mean, it feels inaccurate to actual local TV, local weather in this particular location, which kind of like, as far as the Chicago scale for me, also feels like a ding.
I've thrown a lot of milkshakes at like talk sports radio guys.
Sure.
As I'm sure we all have.
Next one on the list is one that I have put on here because once again, I want to hear if we think it should be on the list. And that is The Dark Knight, which canonically takes place in Gotham City, takes place in a fictional universe. However, this movie came out in 2008, and I remember I was living in Seattle at the time. I remember when I saw it, people identified it to me as a Chicago movie. When I went to college in Chicago, people outside of Chicago would come to me and be like, "Oh, can we go see where they filmed The Dark Knight? Can we go to those spots?" Like that was a thing they wanted to go see. They wanted to go see mostly just Lower Wacker is what they wanted to go see. Dark Knight, of course, Batman film, Christopher Nolan. You know what the story of Batman is. I'm not going to go through the plot, but should this count? Is this a Chicago movie? Should it be on this list? How do we feel?
I'm glad I did it here. I think it was good for the city. I think it's cool seeing, Tribune Tower and all that. I don't know if it's a Chicago movie because, as you said, it takes place in Gotham, but I think it does a very good job of kind of meshing the Gotham energy with Chicago, which I think, a lot of people in the city are sort of proud of that association. So I think spiritually, there's a lot to respect about it from a Chicago perspective.
Yeah, I think it did a good job of capturing the dual level of Gotham by showing the literal dual levels of Chicago. I asked my friends in the group chat, favorite Chicago movie, and Dark Knight comes up every single time. It's one of those things that we are going to claim, we're going to hold on to. I did like how much people fawned over Chicago when this movie came out.
Dark Knight is one of the films, like in a series of films around that time, that sort of made comic book movies, it introduced us to the dark and gritty comic book film, for better and for worse. I think
and Chicago was such a good landscape for that. It was.
And for Chicago to be a part of that. And we haven't really been a part of, since then until Ironheart in the Marvel universe, we haven't really been a part of that superhero kind of since. And I think it's interesting for Chicago to be a part of that. How Chicago is it? I'd say maybe a 2.
Yeah.
I think it's a 2 is fair.
Probably a 2.
Last movie on the list is yours, Rick. Another one that I was unfamiliar with, but I'm a little mad that I'm unfamiliar with it. I slept hard. I was
A lot of people
out.
did.
And that is 2018 film Widows. What is this movie about?
So Widows, directed by Steve McQueen, who did 12 Years a Slave, is based on a 80s British TV serial, but was, in my view, elegantly adapted into a local story. Widows is a good old-fashioned heist movie where there's this group of 4 women who were left out in the cold by their criminal male companions and have to kind of take up their mantle and pull off one more job, such as it was, were to kind of like pay off some debts. And there's a real heavy dose of political intrigue plot lines that includes, you know, Colin Farrell as a Southside alderman doing the accent and trying his best. The movie does a good job of threading in the little Chicago details here and there. There is a lot of exterioritis where, you know, you're in somebody's apartment and it's overlooking the Chicago River in the sort of view that is so clearly meant for office buildings. You got L shots, you got exteriors you'll recognize like Fireside Bowl in Logan Square. I think it's a great film. Would recommend it to anybody.
And I think the cast holds up bar for bar.
The cast is wild.
Viola Davis, Liam Neeson, Michelle Rodriguez, Colin Farrell, a younger Daniel Kaluuya, Brian Tyree Henry, Cynthia Erivo,
In her
Carrie Coon.
in her movie debut.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to James Vincent Meredith, who is like a classic Chicago player. He shows up in, I think, Fargo and some other shows that shot in Chicago as well.
Which to me, you know, that's honestly a good capstone of this whole conversation is like, at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, a great Chicago movie is one that gets those Teamsters checks cleared.
That employs Chicagoans.
Hey, I want to say thank you to all of y'all. I think this is a very exhaustive list. I think the one genre people may have the biggest problem with is Chicago sports movies. All right, there's no Hardball, no Rookie of the Year, no Hoop Dreams. And so if I had to make some honorable mentions, that's probably where I would start. But I really appreciate that. I think this feels like a list created by Chicagoans versus a group of people trying to create a list to represent Chicago. We'd love to hear from the people listening. I want your thoughts, your opinions, the things you agree with, disagree with. What movies would you have added? If we have shown anything, we love talking about Chicago pop culture. And we really just need y'all, the listener, to show us y'all want more of this for us to give you more of episodes like this. But I want to give a huge shout out to executive producer Simone Alisea.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
Our Hey Chicago newsletter editor, Emmy Mack.
Thanks, Jacoby.
And social media manager, Rick Homuth.
Appreciate it as usual.
Before we get out of here, some good news. I got some really fun events happening around the city today, including DJ Lip Gloss at the Austin Town Hall Farmers Market from 1 to 6 p.m. Rain or sunshine, they're going to be out there. Then we got a couple movie-related events tonight, including a Dream Girl sing-along in Woodlawn at the Logan Center for the Arts from 4:30 to 6. And then there's the 2025 Cinema Femme Short Film Festival at the Music Box Theater from tonight through Monday. They're celebrating new work by women and non-binary filmmakers. I know what you're thinking, Kobe, how you always finding all of these events across so many neighborhoods? Well, I get a whole lot of help from our events calendar and our dynamic Hey Chicago newsletter editor, Emmy Mack, who you heard from in today's episode. You can visit the calendar at chicago.citycast.fm, and we're updating this every single week for y'all. And if y'all got some events you want us to throw on there, don't hesitate. You can reach out via email. You can leave us a text or a voicemail at 773-780-0246. And also feel free to DM us on TikTok, on Instagram. We want all of your contributions. This is a collaborative effort here, y'all. We really appreciate you making time for the podcast, the newsletter, whenever, however you listen. It means the world to us. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.